Hey, what's up? Jason here from Unity3D.college. Today I'm going to talk about game development tools. I'm going to go into some of the history I've had developing tools, some of the bad tools that I've seen in the past, the big difference that good tooling can really make in your game, and then I'll jump over to a little bit of more Unity specifics with some tooling that I added to a game that I built semi-recently. So, when I first started out doing game development, one of my first tasks was to build a database tool for a big MMO that I was on. This was a kind of project where we had, I think it was like a 2, 3, 4 gig database just full of character info, NPCs, items, spells, quests, all that kind of stuff. And it was a good fun project, but when I started, the system for pushing things out was pretty bad. So the developers, or the game designers, which I think there was a team of around 30 or 40 game designers at the time, they would do all of their work in a development database. So they had a pretty nice dev tool where they could go in, create things, place them around, and build up this world. They'd build it all up for a couple weeks, and then it'd come time to patch or push something out. And the process from there was, I would say, terrible. What they would have to do is look at all of their data. So they pull up all their data in the tool, go in, edit a config file, launch the tool again in another window, and then they would copy it. So they would literally just recreate all of their work in the test database that would eventually get pushed out to the production servers. So there was like a whole separate database, a copy of the database where they would redo all of their work. And now, as you can imagine, this led to errors because you do the work once and then you do it again. Something's going to get missed, right? Especially with 30 people doing this stuff. Something's always going to go wrong with a big manual process like this. And not only that, it was also just time consuming. Think of all the time wasted creating the content and then copying and putting the content back in. And I mean, we're talking hundreds to tens of thousands of database entries per designer, right? If they've got to add, designer created 1,000 items, they have to go back in and recreate 1,000 items. And it was really painful, really time consuming. And again, that's why it was one of the first tasks that I had was to fix this problem. So the solution I ended up coming up with for that was I worked with the database administrator, and we came up with a basic system where they could label their work. As they were working, they would kind of like log as their user, and they could select essentially what would come down to, you would think of it almost as a source control branch. In fact, I think we called them branches, and they would just label it. When they were working, all of their work would get tagged with that, and it was essentially there was a table, or no, there was a table, and then there was also a column on every database entry. They just had like the ID of the branch that they're working in, and then I built a simple tool where we could pick the branches that we wanted to go live, hit the button, and it would just push all that data over from the development database to the test or production databases. It was quick, it was simple, and it got rid of all that manual work. I mean, this is saving, just on the first run through, we're saving weeks of man hours of work just from building out a little tool that took maybe a week. It might have taken 2 weeks to put that thing together and kind of finish it up. And that was just, like I said, one simple example of a tool. Like, spend a couple weeks, a programmer can spend a little bit of time, save designers and everybody else an insane amount of time, and save the company time, make everybody more productive, and reduce bugs with something simple like that. And I'd mentioned that they had a pretty good database design tool, which was nice. It was it was a tool where you could search for just about anything pretty easily. Everything had a nice, they called it a designer ID, which is essentially a string ID. Think of it, it was usually period separated, but it was a free-flowing string, and people would name them with names that kind of made sense. Like, it'd be like the zone name dot, the quest name dot something else, and then it made it simple to find things to create data. This was the opposite of what I saw on a lot of the other MMOs and projects at the company. So a lot of them were still using things like direct Excel entry or access entry. So they'd log into access. There'd be 70, 80, 100 columns. And then they had to know what each column meant and then put in the value there. You know, if they want to have an ability to do a certain thing, they have to figure out which column it needs to go in, figure out what the integer value is. Like, hey, is a stun 3? Is it 7? Is it, no? And it would be a different value in each column. And it was, I would say, kind of a nightmare from what I saw. It wasn't pretty, wasn't easy at all. Another one of the projects I worked on used all XML files, which sounds neat. Like, it sounds like a cool, great idea. A lot of programmers I know really like it. But when it comes to actually mass manipulating data, which, like, you know, the argument is always, oh, why you never need to mass manipulate data. Totally wrong. You need that all the time when you're working in a big game like this. It's just nearly impossible, right? If you have to update and touch 1,000 XML files or 10,000 XML files to change the value of a stat by 1 or to fix a naming issue, it's painful. It's a pain in the ass, and you have to build tools to do it, and the tools really weren't there for that. It was like edit one thing at a time. There were kind of ways to edit multiple things, but it wasn't easy. And I guess on that project, one of the bigger jobs was itemization. So they'd do an update every, I think it was 9 months, every 12 months, somewhere around there. There's a constant schedule of pushing out patches, or not patches, expansions that, you know, would sell, and they'd have a whole bunch of extra content. So you could get, you know, tens of thousands of items and a bunch of NPCs. And what I'm saying is, one of the people's jobs on the design team was just to itemize. So they would spend, you know, 3-6 months, maybe more, just generating items and creating those. And they did it 2 ways. There was either they could go in and manually create every single item, which, as you can imagine, extremely slow, especially if you want to generate, you know, I need 1,000 kind of junk items to drop, and then I need a set of items for each class, right? Like, got, what is 12 classes, 16 classes, something crazy. I got to generate a full set of items, 20 of, you know, it's like 20 items times 16 classes, and then I need that, you know, times 10, because I need a bunch of different item sets for all these different dungeons. And there was a way to do it with a spreadsheet, but it was kind of painful, and I just kind of joined that team and realized that, hey, this could be easy, right? If we're going with a very simple pattern where you want to just generate out, you know, mages get these kinds of stats, you know, warriors get these kinds of stats, you know, healers get these, and make it pretty simple. We just adjust the power level. I figured, hey, well, let's build a tool for that. So I think I spent 2, maybe 3 weeks just working with a game designer, building up a tool that would generate out an entire expansion worth of items, essentially with the click of a button. So you got it, so you could set it up, you know, kind of figure out what stats work where, give us things a power level that would easily scale, and then hit a button. All your items would be generated. And again, this was one of those flat file systems, so it's generating thousands and thousands of items in all these different files that you could just commit in and push up. And it saved, I don't know exactly how much time. Last I had checked, they were still using this system, and it was taking, you know, I said six months or more to generate all these items, turned down to a couple hours at first, you know, maybe a week or 2 of going in and tuning, adjusting things, regenerating until you got it right. But huge time saver nonetheless. And I mean, it's been, I don't know, 6-7 years. I think they're still using the same system. At least I hope they are, unless they found something better. So, like I said, that's 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks of development time to save, you know, what would that be, like a couple years worth of game designer time right there. They've just been knocked off just from creating a couple of tools. And you know, as game developers, we see this a lot with artists, right? Like, artists use a ton of different tools. They use the perfect tool for the job every single time. But I've noticed that game designers in general kind of get the shaft here, and they don't usually get focused on a lot. Now, there are some companies that do a great job with tools, but in my experience and from every developer I talk to, almost all of them are pretty bad. It's like the job that nobody really wants to do, to go in and build these tools. Nobody but me. I love doing it because I like making the designers smile and making it easy for them to create awesome content faster. But a lot of places just don't do that. They just build the game. The engineers just want to code game systems or graphic systems, and they don't want to do any of the work to actually make it easier to build out their game. So those are just, like I said, a couple little things that I've come across in the past. Like I said, there are a lot more, but I want to stop talking about that and just dive into a little bit of tooling stuff that I like to do in Unity. So here I've got just a game that I built a while ago. It's about a year old or so. And in this one I wanted to do is like a simple wave spawner. So like you shoot zombies, they spawn, they keep coming, and then you clear out a wave and you go to the next wave. And there are a couple ways that you could do this in Unity. I've seen people write out big, long, just C# scripts that have all this stuff in it, which works, although I wouldn't recommend it because it's not maintainable. It's not easy for a game designer to do much with. And then there's the situations that I've seen where people have like a single object here and all of their game data is in a component, all serialized out to that one component or to an XML file or something like that. And then just the one component has everything in the inspector, and they write a big custom inspector, or they don't, and it's a giant pain in the ass to work with. But I don't really like that system either. And the main reason is just that a lot of the stuff that you want to do, you have to recreate in editor tools. It gets confusing and hard to just move things around, drag things around, and I don't know. I just find it less useful than the system I'm going to show right here. And what I've got here is essentially I've got just a wave data object. This was because I have two different modes in here. There's a story mode and a barely touched survival mode. So I'm just going to focus on the story mode part right here. And the story mode essentially has a set of waves. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this splits right here. So 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 waves here. And then if you went on the hard way, there were slightly less waves. So the way it worked was each wave would enable one at a time. So you get in, the first wave kicks off, and whatever's underneath that wave does its stuff. Now, if you're looking over here, you can see like I've got not a lot on the wave. Like the wave has an option for an instant transition, auto end, I don't even remember what that did. A win on end, that was just like if you beat this one, that's the end of the game. Nice easy way to set that up, just a checkbox, because we had two different ways to win there. And then some delays and some text and stuff. There's also a component here for this lighting controller. So this is kind of one of those tools that was really, really helpful. So in this game, it limited on the amount of real-time lights. It was a VR game with using the lab renderer, and it had a limit of up to, I think it was 18 real-time lights, which is really nice and rare for a VR game. But setting up which of those lights were enabled for each wave was kind of a pain, right? Like we didn't want to have each wave have like all of the lights underneath it and then have to duplicate those lights and swap them or anything. I wanted to have all my lights in the scene and then have an easy way to just turn on and off different lights. So you can see here I've got the enabled lights for this wave is, whatever this one is, this street lamp. It's all of these ones with the yellow on them. So that's part of the tooling here. This is the yellow gizmos around them are the lights that would be enabled. And you could just hit plus to add in another light, like every light here that you wanted to add. And they're all sorted by distance. That 27 there is the distance. So this one's at 107. It's some street lamp, semi far away. Once I enable it, we should find it. Oh, it's that one right there. So the question mark would let you select. That's really, really far away. But then I also set up a quick tool to just pick a slider and hit auto configure, and it would just select all of the lights that were in that range. So you just go like that, and it would just select the whatever it is, the 4 lights there. I hadn't clicked in gizmo or in here, that's why the gizmos didn't update. But you can see it's just those 4 lights. If I pulled it all the way down, and click over here is actually, I lost my click. I believe it was none of the lights are selected there. Oh, 3 of them. Wow, 3 lights are within that range. Okay, so they're pretty small. So I did the same thing for particles, right? So particle systems, the same thing. So if it had like fire going, you would want fire all over the entire city, just in the parts that you could see. Now, I'm going to expand it out just a little bit more and try to go a little bit quicker here. But when you would start the wave, what would happen is all of the game objects underneath the wave just enable, right? So this thing turns on and all of these get triggered, except for the end. End was a special one that would turn on when you finish the wave. So it'd be like if you want to do a teleport here or something else, if you want to show some text, make a guy spawn, make some audio appear, you just put it under the end object. But other than that, everything was just a child that would lock on, or that would activate as soon as you turned on the wave. So the first one here you could see was player position. This is at the beginning of each one, and it would just do a teleport. So just you create this player position object, put it where you wanted, you get a little blue box there that you could see, and this is where the player would end up teleporting to at the beginning of the wave. So wave 1, they start right here. Here's just a little menu to pick or resume your wave, but that would be gone by the time they start. Other than that, we would have a object to set player health. So it's just, hey, heals you to 10 health. You can take 10 hits. And then there were a bunch of wave timers and wave like spawners. So here you see after 0 seconds, that's for all of the spawners under here. And there's only one spawner under here, which is this guy right here. So the spawners would work like this. They'd spawn at whatever point was green, which is where this thing is placed. And then you could add random waypoints beneath them. If I want to add another waypoint, just hit add random waypoint, and it adds it automatically. Just select it and drag it around. And you see we've got gizmos and lines here showing where it's going to go. And what would happen essentially is the NPC would walk to that point and then go to the player. It kind of gave like a spreading out effect where things didn't just look like they're all coming from the same spot, but we still just had to have one spawner. Didn't have to have like 4 spawners here all tied together, working together. Just pick one and have it walk there. And then when they're, the way it works is the player's back here, so they don't see the spawn. They just see them kind of walking from one of these points once they've gotten there. And then we also set up things like these inspector text object, or inspector text that was happening on, I think it's like on inspector UI. So I could adjust the delay here, and you can see like the time just updates right in here, so you can see exactly how long it takes. Could add in a little note here if I wanted to, just like, hey, this is a special thing for some reason. And then the spawn points also had some custom editor work. So on top of just the gizmos, you can see we've got the text here that shows like, hey, this is on intro 1. It just means it's this one right here. It's showing that that's the wave name. Shows the start time of the first spawn and the stop time of the last spawn. The number of things that spawns, and what was this? 1 every 6 seconds for 12 seconds. So that's what this is. It's one thing every 6 seconds. Total time is 12 seconds. So imagine like at 0 we spawn 1, at 6 seconds we spawn 1, and then at 12 seconds we spawn 1, and then we're done. And then once all of these things are done, so this would start at 0 seconds. After 10 seconds, this one would enable its children. After 30 seconds, this would enable its 2 children. After 50, this would enable its 2 children, or its 1 child. And this thing's 1 child was literally just a speed up. So it was like at 50 seconds, on this wave at 50 seconds, all the NPCs start running. The zombies start running at you instead of walking. And it's nice and easy to set it up like this, because now if you wanted to add another spawner here, like, hey, you know, maybe at 15 seconds, we also want to do something, right? So just go in here, put in a 15, and then adjust these spawners. Like, where's this spawner right here? I just duplicated that. Now put another set of guys that spawn right here. Maybe they spawn up on this ramp somewhere, and then they drop down on your head or something. No, or they spawn up on a building and jump down, or a scream happens, or whatever. But it made it really easy to set this kind of stuff up, which was a huge time saver. So again, like setting up a bunch of content like this where you have just tons and tons of waves of things or NPCs or whatever it is that you're building, just setting up some simple tooling like this makes a huge difference. You can imagine if you try to do this all in a script, or even just without the simple little editor changes here. So let's disable intro 1 and go to like let's go to one of the harder ones, like here, easy 9. This is like the end wave here, and there's a ton of stuff here. There's a lot of things happening, and these are the notes, by the way, the 6 from T sides. That's, you put it in the note and it shows up in here. So I really liked this system here because it made it easy to build things. It made it easy to duplicate data, to make small changes, rearrange things. I could also just put in any game object. So if I had, if I have a thing in the inspector, if I want to just enable some giant subset of game objects, maybe I want to turn a building on, turn a building off, like I'd have to put in some special code for that. For this, it'd just be like, drop it in as a child here. When it's enabled, the thing turns on and does whatever it needs to do. So I don't know. I think tooling is important. I hope this was at least semi-helpful. It was more of just me kind of getting this stuff out and talking a little bit about how important I think building good tools are and how much time you can save. Like I said, on a project like this, it probably saved a couple weeks of design time, and it made it a lot easier and a lot faster just to put in nice stuff to build up waves really quickly. Like I could rebuild waves in this thing in a day easily. But in those bigger projects, those MMOs and stuff, it saved years of time. And if you're building a bigger game like that, really definitely focus on the tools and make sure that you use them too. Don't just build tools and then ship them off to designers and leave them. Watch them use them with them, and then find the very obvious, very easy pain points that you can fix and just fix those. Like I said, one more thing before I cut this off. So one of the things that really pushed this forward for me and made me realize that working with the tools is extremely important was just when I was adding in a little bit of content myself. So I was working on one of these MMOs again, and I decided, hey, I want to add in a whole raid fight, right? Just add in a big encounter that would be fun, and it would be fun for me to put it in. I got approval to put it in, so I was like, hey, building this thing up. And I started going through the tools for scripting. And it was something I hadn't really played with much. Nobody really talked about it a lot. And I wanted to just, have my guys do some stuff, run over to this area, do a little bit of stuff, run over to another area, do a little bit of stuff, and then loop, and then kind of keep doing that until something happened. And I'm going through the tool, like, hey, okay, do this. And it was like a step-by-step tool where you gave it each individual command. And then at the bottom, I'm like, okay, now I want this to just loop, just go back up to the top. Wasn't available. The option to loop in a script was not possible. The only way to do it, and the way that my poor design team had been doing it for 7 or 8 years that I had no idea about, was they would, at the end of the script, start another script, and then that other script would refire the first script. So they had to create a whole second script that was hard linked to the first script just to relaunch the first script as the only way to loop, instead of a simple like loop or go to or a while loop or anything like that. And I was just shocked. I was like, what the hell? Like, oh yeah, it's always been like this. Like, we asked for a change, 5-6 years ago, and somebody said it would be too hard, so we never got it. I was like, what the hell? So anyway, if you're a programmer, you can imagine this took about an hour to add in. It's like, okay, I'm definitely not doing it that shitty way. I'm just gonna fix this and start adding in some branching and conditional stuff that made it simple. And of course, at that point, it was way too late. Design team was almost gone. That 30-man team had dropped down to like 5, so it didn't help a lot. But had it been caught early, it probably would have stopped a lot of bugs, saved more time, stopped designers from burning out from frustration of not being able to do the simplest basic things. And like I said, I think if any of the programmers on the team had done that stuff, they would have also realized it, known how easy it was to fix, and just fixed it. It's just everybody was busy doing other stuff. Nobody actually used the tools that were that were being, forced on the designers. I say forced, that's probably not the right word. The tools that the designers were stuck using. So use your tools, build good tools, make your designers happy, and it'll make you happy, it'll save you a lot of time, and it'll save your company a lot of money. So hopefully this is helpful for you. If you have questions or got your own stories about tool development, I'd love to hear them. Feel free to share, drop a comment below. Hit me up on the website at Unity3D.college. I send out emails every day with little stories like this. I think I've mentioned some of these things in some of those emails. And then blog and write about game development stuff. So thanks for watching. If you like the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And see you later.